Let's take a look at this crankshaft here. Important thing to take a look at if you have a crankshaft machined undersize. So here I've gone undersize. I think this one's 10 or 20 thou undersize. Thing is this is a stock VW crankshaft, and the OEM crankshaft has a negative fillet radius at the end of the journal between there and the crank web. And again, this is not a thrust surface here, but it is machined so that in the event that the crank does move back and forth with excessive end play, thrust loading, clutch application, the gears pushing it back and forth, you know, the helical cut gears on the crank tend to push everything to the back of the engine. So this one here, when you put on the bearing, because of the negative fillet radius that's been removed, it doesn't allow that bearing to travel close. You can almost see there's a line that you can almost see. I'm not pointing at anything down there, but where the bearing actually comes against and doesn't allow it to sit further in. That also causes a little bit of misalignment of the oil hole. You see that here? So what I've done is I've taken the bearing and I've hand cut a radius all the way around on it. And I just do that with a file, and you know, take a bit of time to do it and make sure it fits. So when it does go on, and again, positioning it right so that the relief for the bearing dowel is at the back, and allowing that to drop all the way on. You can hear it just bottom. Okay, so now when that's lined up there, the journal hole is completely open. And if we even bring it back a little bit to where you would have your end play set, maybe 20, or pardon me, maybe, you know, 30 or 40 thou worth of shims in there, maybe giving yourself the right end play 2 to 5 thou, somewhere in that range, whatever you want. Obviously 3 would probably be about the most optimum. And again, we're not going to run into this radiused area of the crank now from where it's been machined. The other thing on this crank too is the stock one has a really large opening here to allow a little bit more volume control to get around the back side of the bearing where it's fed. So that also just helps get the oil right out to that journal. On this other crankshaft that I have here, look at how they've done this one. Now, these ones are cut slightly different. These are straight drilled crankshaft, and it has a very small opening there, or relief area at the bearing oil supply hole. So this one, having the holes drilled straight in, they cross drill the crankshaft down through the web or through the counterweight, and that's where they get the cross drilling to allow the oil to move through the journals. But on the OEM one, every one of these is drilled on a cross angle all the way through the crankshaft. And you can see even in the center one where there's 2 holes, it has a really big, large relief area to allow for more oil to get to the journal and up and around through the supply. Anyways, just a couple things to take a look at. You might want to inspect that for how much clearance you do have there when you're installing new bearings. I've also found that on aftermarket crankshafts, they don't have the negative relief like the OEM one has. So, in fact, if we just flip this crankshaft around here, this one here is an aftermarket also. Yeah, it does the exact same thing. And you can see that this one actually has a really big positive radius on there. Okay, I'm not sure what the radius value is on that. You can use radius gauge to find it, but if you want to match the bearing, but I just hand tool them, and you just file them and carve them until they fit down, and then they sit nice and flush on the crankshaft, like that.